Okay, yeah, there we go. Yeah. My name is Josh Snader, like he said. If I had to sum up the last 2 years of my life in 3 words, sweat, trauma, and float planes would be the words I would pick. So that's what I titled my presentation tonight. I just want to, so we had transferred this over from Apple to Windows, and they don't always like to play together very well, so this presentation might not have things that, it might not line up very well, but I think we can still use it. All right, so I just wanted to kind of go through what we're doing in Papua New Guinea, how we help the people of Papua New Guinea, and this is just kind of an outline of what to expect. We're just going to go do a quick overview. We're going to talk a little bit about Papua New Guinea. Where is it? You know, what does it look like? And then we're going to talk about a ministry and just some things that we learned along the way that hopefully apply to you as well. So yeah, we are the Snader family. That's obviously me, and then there's my wife Janice, and our oldest Adeline, and then there's Elliot in the middle there, Oliver on your right, and then Juliet was born about 3 months ago. So she's part of the reason we came back when we did, although it was time for a furlough, so it worked out pretty well. Here we are in Columbus Airport. When we left America, we had 13 bags, about 650 pounds of luggage, and this is the beginning of our 100-hour journey to where we were going to live. The 100 hours may not have been strictly necessary. I was a little cheap when I was buying the tickets, so, but I'm not doing that again. We're going to go a different way next time. But that's a picture of us right before we left, and kind of what we do is Samaritan Aviation. We're with an organization called Samaritan Aviation, and we provide free medevacs to remote villages in Papua New Guinea. We operate on the northern coast, and we're also starting a base down on the southern Gulf as well. My job there is helping to maintain the 3 float planes that we have there. It's a lot of work. They get banged up. There's a lot of corrosion. It's hot. It's salt water. It's a lot of work, but that's my main job. Janice helps visit what we call the house sick, which is what they call it in that language there. Everything is very literal, so it's a house sick is where you go. So she helps visit patients and helps in the office. She does a good job here. She's it looks like they just had a new baby, and she's talking with them. And so that's what she does. She helps in the office as well. And our children help sometimes too. Here, Elliot is showing this little guy how to put together a Lego set, because they never saw a Lego set before. So that was kind of fun. Okay. So that's kind of a quick overview of what we do. But it's hard to really appreciate or understand what we do without first knowing a little bit about the country, because it's so different than America or what you're used to, at least what I was used to. So I'm just going to kind of go over Papua New Guinea, kind of what the animals they have. Well, first of all, the location, where is it, the climate, the terrain, wildlife, a little bit of a short history, language, culture, and some challenges that the country has. So first of all, the location. Papua New Guinea is a tropical island. It's just north of Australia, and it's just south of the equator. So the days there are very scheduled. It's like 6 o'clock, the sun comes up, 6 o'clock, the sun goes down. Half the year it's about 6:30, half the year it's about 6 o'clock. It doesn't vary much. Seasons are very hard to tell. I never know what season it is. People there seem to know. It's pineapple season, it's not pineapple season. You just never know unless you go to the market and there's no pineapples. It shares an island with Indonesia. Indonesia's on the western side there. Indonesia has all those islands. It comes down, and then it has the western side of the island. Papua New Guinea's on the eastern side there. It's part of the Oceania continent group, and it is the largest island in the world if you consider Australia a continent. And the island, it's it's a large island, but it supports 5% of the known species on Earth. So there's a lot of biodiversity there. There's a lot of strange animals. It's full of life. It's kind of a really neat place to be. We live in this little city called Wewak up there on the northern coast. That's where we live and operate. And this is our P&G apartment. It's not much to look at, but it does have an air conditioner, and that's really important. But yeah, it's this apartment. The other half of the house is someone else's house. This is our half. All right, so the climate and terrain. This is a picture of the Manam Motu volcano. So there's a lot of volcanoes there, but mainly what I wanted to show you is the elevation. In the center of the island, you have a mountain range going down the middle. Mount Wilhelm is the tallest peak there at 15,000 feet. And in that middle of the island, there's a lot of extreme terrain. It goes up and down a lot. There's a lot of valleys. It's part of the reason why PNG has been so isolated. The tribes are very isolated from each other just because they can't travel much. It's very challenging terrain to travel through. Then there's the coastal lowlands on the northern side and the southern side there. And you can just see the tip of Australia coming up from the bottom there. They're very close. So there's the coastal lowlands. It's hot, humid, swampy, and that's where we are. We're up on the northern side in the coastal lowlands. I don't know if you remember from school, you learned about something called tectonic plates, and this is a map of the tectonic plates. If you remember, wherever the tectonic plates, wherever they border each other, you tend to have a lot of volcanoes and earthquakes. And if you find on the map there, it's kind of hard to see because it's kind of not set up like we're used to seeing it. But Australia's over here, and then right above Australia, you see Papua New Guinea is right in the middle, right on the border of the boundary of a plate there. So we have a lot of earthquakes, we have a lot of volcanoes in the country. You know what, I'm doing this without my notes. That's pretty brave, but I just forgot that they're over here. So Samaritan, I'm on to the next one already, okay. So PNG contains 5% of the known species on Earth. There's an average of 2 new species per week discovered on the island. The official national bird is the bird of paradise. There's several different variations. They're actually home, PNG is home to about 900 species of bird. But the bird of paradise is probably the most spectacular, and it's on their flag. It's on their national flag. Fruit bats. Fruit bats, they have a lot of fruit bats there. Fruit bats are the largest bat in the world. They grow to be almost the same weight as a chihuahua, and they have about a 3-foot wingspan. So they're really large, but they are harmless. They just eat fruit, as the name implies. This is a picture I took from our back deck. This is April. It's like a seasonal thing. So April, May, the trees will be full of fruit bats, and it'll sound kind of like a herd of guinea pigs. They're just squealing, and it's really loud. But it's pretty cool because at night they all come out and fly around. Cassowaries. So PNG and Australia are home to a bird called a cassowary. It is, they're considered the world's most dangerous bird. They have really strong legs with like dagger claws. They can kick people, and they have been known to kill people already. They produce kind of a thumping noise in their throat. Sounds kind of like a drum. So if you hear a drum and you see a big bird, just head the other direction. I do have some of the cassowary. They make knives and stuff out of cassowary femur bones, and I have some back on the table back there if you want to go look at those. Also, PNG is part of the Coral Triangle, it's called. They have some of the world's most significant reefs. This picture I actually took myself when we were at the local beach. So we have clownfish at the local beach. Snorkeling at the reef is probably one of my favorite things about living in Papua New Guinea. It's very crowded, I would say. It's hard to get away from people, especially if you're the white guy walking down the road. You're the center of attention. So sometimes when I need to get away, I go snorkeling because it's hard to talk to someone while you're snorkeling. So that's a good place to get away and kind of enjoy God's amazing creation. It's not all fun and games, though. Looking for shells in PNG might be the most dangerous pastime you can have. This is considered to be one of the deadliest animals on Earth. It's called a venomous cone snail. I wrote that wrong. And it can kill a human being in about 5 minutes. Of course, we didn't know any of this when Janice found one on the beach. And I remember we were sitting there holding it, and Janice was like, hey, look at this really beautiful shell I found. And we were annoyed because there was something living inside of it. And we thought, well, how do we get rid of this thing? And so we were handing it back and forth, and his little arm would come out and wave around. And we were like, well, whatever, we'll figure out how to get this thing out. But later we looked it up in a guidebook, and we found out that little harpoon, they call it, if we would have gotten stung by that harpoon, we'd probably be dead. So, and it can go through wetsuits, it can go, it's not something to mess around with. So, but we do have the shell in our collection now, and we're quite proud of it. So talking about poisonous things lead to other poisonous things. This is called a stonefish, and we were swimming one day with a national family there at the beach where we have the nice coral reef, and everyone was looking for shells. It's one of Janice's favorite things to do, and so everyone was running around looking for shells, and one of the P&G kids that was with us, he saw this on the ocean floor, thought it was a shell, swam down, went to grab it, and got stung on his thumb by the spines in his back. And they are poisonous, so he had to be rushed to the local hospital, get some anti-venom, and thankfully he turned around pretty quick and made a full recovery. But it was a close call, and I remember sitting there with him, and he said he got stung by something, and I was like, it could be anything. I don't know what's in these waters. I don't know anything about the reef. But luckily there was a lady there, a local lady who knew what it was, and she said, you have to go to the hospital right away. So he's alive and well today. But one story about anti-venom kind of leads to another. And these are what they call death adders. They are common in the area. We have quite a few of them around. Since we live in the city, we don't see them as often. I have seen one on the road already. It was already dead, thankfully. But death adders are highly venomous. Now, if you get bitten by like a normal venomous snake, like a rattlesnake or something, they only inject venom about 50% of the time. So you might, chances are 50-50 that you didn't get any poison. These guys will envenomate about 90% of the time, and they have longer fangs, so they inject the venom really deep into your tissue. And they're not scared of people. So they'll just stay on the path. They'll just sit. People will step on them. People encounter them a lot more because they don't run away. We also have crocodiles in the Sepik River. There are a lot of crocodiles. It's a sacred animal to many tribes in the region. They fear it, but they also revere its power. Some tribes say that they came from the crocodile. They revere it as their ancestor. So traditionally in some tribes, when boys become men, they have this ceremony where they go into they call it the spirit house, and the elders of the tribe will take a sharp piece of bamboo or a razor blade, and they will put cut these patterns into their backs that are supposed to resemble crocodile hide. And it's fairly common. You'll see it around town. It's a painful process, but it's part of becoming a man, I guess, in that tribe. So at any rate, some tribes eat the crocodile, some tribes don't, but there is crocodile curry at the local restaurant, and it's pretty good. All right, so now we're just going to start in the history. This is a rusted out Japanese anti-aircraft gun on the hill behind our town. If you see that it looks like a little island on the horizon there, that's actually a peninsula, and we live on that peninsula. So P&G, as far as the Europeans are concerned, P&G was first discovered in 1526, and then in 1880, Germany claimed the northern half of the island, and Britain claimed the southern half. And still, in the northern part of the island, about 20% of their local trade language is German. So Janice knew some of the language right away, like she recognized a lot of the words. I, of course, don't know German, so I didn't recognize anything, but I say that's why Janice is learning it faster than me. So Australia gained full control of the island what is now called Papua New Guinea after World War I, and then in World War II, PNG became heavily involved in the Pacific Theater. The Japanese attacked and occupied the northern side of the island. And the interesting thing is we live right, the Japanese occupied our town, so you can find pictures. Here the Allied forces are bombing our beach, this is where we go swimming now. But they dropped a lot of bombs in the area, and in fact, there was a critical turning point of the war here where they kind of turned back the Japanese. But the problem is, actually, when we drive to a local beach, and we drive right past where this happened, where the Japanese formally surrendered to the Australian forces on September 13th, 1945 at Cape Wam, and we drive through Cape Wam every time we go to our beach. So there's a lot of World War II history right in our area. It's really neat to be able to see that. A lot of the people there, a lot of the locals will have rusted out grenades or bayonets or helmets or things from the war. They like to show you, and it's always a little hair-raising when they hand you this rusty grenade, and you're like, wow, you're like, you can keep it. I don't want to touch that thing. And so they dropped a lot of bombs, and a lot of bombs didn't explode, and we're still finding them everywhere in the area. Usually when they build a new house, or they put it in a parking lot or something, they'll find one. This was uncovered about a month before we left, and usually what they do is they'll set it up and they'll start a fire under it, and they'll just leave it go until it explodes. And so sometimes randomly during the night you'll hear this boom, and you'll wake up and you're like, oh, that was just a bomb going off, and you go back to sleep. But one time they found a bomb in the near the bus stop, and they rolled it out into the bus stop, and they had it all taped off for a while, and they were waiting for the Australian Army to come decommission the bomb, but the Australian Army, it's not their top priority. And so it sat there for a while, and after a while people are like, oh, well, they started using it as a bus seat, and it stayed there for a long time until the Australian Army finally came and took care of it. So that's how things go sometimes. So language. This is a picture I took in Port Moresby of some Huli Wigmen. It is probably the most famous tribe in PNG. A lot of PNG pictures, you'll see their makeup like this. They live on the southern side of the island, and they wouldn't be in our area. But it just kind of highlights the variety of people, the variety of tribes there. There's over 820 languages spoke in the country, in Papua New Guinea itself. It's the most linguistically diverse country in the world, and it's there's a lot of missions there, a lot of Bible translation, because obviously when you have a lot of languages, you have a lot of people translating those languages into Scripture. So we have a lot of missionaries in our area, which is great. It's a blessing. Every other Sunday we have church with all the missionaries in the area, and I'd say it's the best time I have in the week, just meeting all these amazing people who live in the bush, and hearing their stories makes me thankful for the house we're in. So there's 3 official languages of Papua New Guinea. Tok Pisin, which is what we speak up in the northern side. English, generally people, the more educated they are, the better they know English, because schools will teach it, especially schools in town. And so that's nice if you're doing visas or working with the government. You can do it all in English, which is super nice. The local people will not know English very well. And then Hiri Motu is on the southern side. I never run into that because we don't live down there. So we try to speak Tok Pisin. I'm still not very good at it. All right, so we'll go through a little bit of the culture. I took this picture while I was driving down the road. This is what they call a Mary blouse. Mary is what they call a woman, so Mary blouse is a woman's dress. That's what they call it. Again, it's a very literal language. They don't mess around. It's Mary blouse. And this is what you'll see. 90% of the women wearing. Some of them, sometimes they'll put sleeves on them, but this is basically what everyone wears. It's very cool, very breezy. Not that I know from experience. You'd have to ask Janice. But it looks very breezy. So this is, of course, there's markets, as there are in many third world countries. You can see markets are very much part of the culture in PNG. On the left, you can see the handbags on the top. They're called bilums. And every tribe, traditionally, every tribe has a different way, a different pattern that they teach people to weave. And so if a woman's carrying a bilam, they can tell where that woman's from. And also, they would usually have a bright side and different colors. The sides would be different colors. And if they're in a bad mood, they would wear it one way. If they're in a good mood, they'd wear it the other. So it's kind of like a mood ring, I guess, but for the natives. They don't really do that much anymore, but I was told that was very much how they did it back in the day. And then on the right, you see the dried fish. They'll smoke the fish. They just put it on racks over a fire. And these probably come out of the Sepik River, which is a really large river not far from us. And I don't know how they eat it. It's just skin and bones, and there's a little bit of meat, but they love it. That's a main course right there. Also, remember we're talking about fruit bats, the biggest bats in the world. They come around once a year, and when they do, they'll catch them and sell them at the market. And so I don't know. We never tried it. I feel a little unsafe eating bats, but you can buy them. I think they typically eat them is what they do. Historically, food has been very scarce on the island, so they learn to eat whatever they have. Yeah, so here's me on the left standing with I did not catch it. I bought it at a fish market, but it's just, you can buy, this is a mackerel, and you can buy these all the time. The women go out fishing, and they sell them at the fish market, and it's one of our favorite fish. It's easy to fillet. And then on the right there, I'm just touching, they have some squids sitting out there. And the women are very friendly, and if you ask, can I touch that, they'll usually say, yeah, go ahead, because they're hoping you buy it. I did not buy the squid. I just wanted to see how it felt. You get some really strange things in the market sometimes. These are called sago grubs. They are in sago palm trees, and they love these. This is like a quick snack for them. The sago palm is very important to them, and this is one of the reasons why they get a lot of food out of it. And then this is a market. The biggest market, and the one closest to our house is this market. We're walking towards the entrance, and here you can see Janice wearing a Mary blouse. That's what people wear there. And you can see people sitting down there. Not all of them have it, but a lot of them do. Just that same style of dress. And again, they're selling more on the fence. Fishing is very much part of the culture, especially where we live. We're right in the ocean. This is a typical dugout canoe. They've been making it in the same way for thousands of years. And they take an axe and they just hack a tree out so they have a canoe shape. This one has an outrigger on, so that's meant to go out in the ocean. The ones that are in the river canoes don't have any outrigger on, and I don't know how they don't fall out of them. They'll stand up, and they'll stand up in those tippy little things and paddle around without any issues. This is an older woman. They would call it a Lapun Mary. She fishes from the beach, and this is a typical site. You'll drive down the road. There's a road right along this beach, and you'll see people fishing off of it all the time. And if you look at the lights on that peninsula there sticking out, that's our hospital that we take a lot of our patients to. So this is right in the area. I just thought PNG has beautiful sunrises every day. I think that I've seen some of the most beautiful sunrises of my life there. And it seems like you're never disappointed. Every night is better, I think. So here's another woman fishing on the concrete pier in our town. And the funny story about this is I was kayaking, and I asked if I could take her picture. And she had a bunch of kids around her, and she said, yes, you can take my picture. But first, these kids have to get out of the way. So she shooed them all to the other side of the dock so she could get her picture without any kids there. I don't know if she thought I was from National Geographic or what, but she was very happy that I took her picture. So I don't know her name, but I guess she's kind of famous now. And then this is, I think his name's Peter. I met him while I was kayaking, and he's fishing as well, fishing with a net there. Fishing, he's a local policeman, but he still goes fishing. It's just part of their culture. They do it to subsidize their income. Even as a policeman, he probably doesn't make that much. But that's very much a typical PNG setup right there. And then in the background, you can see kind of a big ship out there. They do have big ships that come in from different countries and will set up nets and do commercial fishing as well. So you have, old school fishing and new school fishing right there in the same picture. And then, of course, they have the houses. That's part of their culture. 80% of the population lives in rural villages. So it's not a it's not a developed country. These are the typical houses they'll live in. Typically, a man will build a house, work on his house before he gets married, then they move in once they're married. This is kind of a typical village. This is a village called Gavamas. We flew out there and stayed out there for a night with a local missionary that was there. That was a really cool experience. It just really opened my eyes to, it's like camping. I mean, they don't have mattresses. They just sleep on, they have an elevated plank that they sleep on, and they can sleep fine. And I don't know how they do it, but even when we bring them into the hospital, we have this nice hospital bed, and we'll come in and they'll be sleeping on the cement floor because that's what they're used to. They'll have a piece of cardboard and they'll lay down and sleep. And then this is a guest house we stayed in. This is a very typical way to build houses. They'll use one kind of palm tree for the whole construction. They'll take the leaves or the fronds off the sago palm, and they'll make the roof out of that. They'll weave the sides, and then they'll make a ladder. They usually elevate it just to keep it away from bugs and stuff, and then they can also put pigs or chickens or something under the house, keep them cooler. Snakes still find their way in the house sometimes, but you are away from most pests. And then here, this is a village called Kambaramba, and here they just build their house right on the water. Like maybe 1 month out of the year, they do have some dry ground, but most of the year they are living right on top of the water. They even put their pigs and chickens and stuff on the lower level, right above the water. So as you can imagine, this country has a lot of challenges. One of those is logistics and infrastructure. The kids like to call this, well, let me look at my notes. I forget what they call it. No, the Bridge of Doom. So we go, this is the bridge we go over to go to our favorite beach. And I like to call it log reinforced concrete because they had a cement bridge that started cracking and crumbling and falling apart. So instead of fixing the bridge, they just threw trees all over it. And I guess that's good enough. It hasn't fallen down yet. Well, I don't know, maybe it did, and we're not there, but that's kind of their approach to infrastructure, is fix it with what you have. Also, there's a lot of landslides. There's a very steep terrain, a lot of mud, a lot of rain, and so you'll have landslides like this fairly frequently. It takes out the roads. You can see there, it's just almost gone. That was while we were there that happened. That wasn't too far from our town. There's also robberies. Tribal families will frequently block the roads to make political points or to dispute land ownership or something like that. It's common for bandits to set up roadblocks. They'll put down a tree across the road, and when you come around and stop, they'll rob you. It's kind of what happened here. They break the windows. Usually, if you comply, you don't get hurt. They'll let you go again. But it's not an easy place to travel. There is a network of cell towers across the island that give you spotty service if you're out in the bush. But it is entirely possible, and I'm Facebook friends with some of these people. They sit in their hut, and they're on Facebook. They have a solar panel. They put a solar panel on their thatched roof, and they sit there on Facebook on their phone in the middle of nowhere. And so you can be friends with them on Facebook, but they can't get to a doctor. They can't get out. They can't. It's like they're isolated, but yet they're not. And it's very strange. They're making this leap straight from the Stone Age into the Internet age, and it's a hard thing for a culture to learn to adjust to. This is a generator. The electric grid there is very unreliable. I'd say we have electric about half the time. The other half of the time, this generator is running, and frequently overheats, and parts are hard to find, and it's kind of like a tradition for, about 2 a.m., all the air conditioners stop, all the fans stop, and a bunch of half-dressed men kind of stumble out to the generator with our toolboxes, and we're like, okay, what's wrong with this thing now? And we get covered in soot, we get covered in oil, and we smell like diesel fuel, and we come back to bed and tell our wives not to complain too much because the fan is running. They have a very strong tribal mentality. This is a photo I took one day while I was driving to the hangar. The 2 smoke columns there in the front are 2 houses that were burned down in a dispute. Someone had hurt or killed somebody else, and so they went and burned down these houses to try to retaliate. And in PNG, it's common and it's expected. It's like your duty. If someone kills someone from your family, it's your duty and cultural expectation to go do a retaliatory murder in their family, even if the person had nothing to do with it. And so as you can imagine, if this chain starts happening, it explodes pretty quickly. So violence is always like right around the corner. And I think it's important to note that PNG people are some of the friendliest people I've ever met. Like if you go through customs and you have a family, they're very accommodating. They'll take you, put you to the front of the line. Or if you have a crying baby, they don't like crying babies. So if you have a crying baby, you're first in line, you're done, get you out of there. So they're very accommodating to families. They're very respectful towards elderly people. They do a lot of things really well, but violence has kind of been their go-to solution for thousands of years, and it's still very much ingrained in their culture. And because there's so many tribes in the area, they don't really have a national identity. They don't have a common. There's a lot of things that they share in common, but they have a very strong family tribal mindset where if you hurt someone from my family, we'll hurt someone from yours. And since there's so many languages, so many cultures, there's a lot of violence that can pop up because there's a lot of differences. There's a lot of pride in family identity, so that violence can escalate extremely quickly. Police, they do have police forces, but they're understaffed, they're undertrained. Sometimes they don't have ammunition for their guns. Sometimes they can't get to the fight because the bridge is out, or they don't have any fuel in their cars because they were short that month or something. Use your imagination, it probably happened. So it can be a challenging situation as far as security goes in PNG. Education. This is the Samban Central Elementary School. There have been 2 generations of missionaries, family missionaries in this village, and so they have a very good school. It's the best school in the area, but unfortunately it is very uncommon for a village to even have a school. Many villages are pretty isolated. They've never even seen the ocean. Like, we often fly people in, and they're just amazed when they see the ocean, and it amazes me because I'm like, you're just over there. Like, how did you never see the ocean before? But we hear a lot of people gasping, and when they see the ocean, they're just blown away. And it always leaves me amazed. And it's because they don't have any school, these rural villages are largely illiterate. They can't read. It's a very oral language. Everything's history, stories, is all spoken verbally. They don't write it down. And villagers, especially young men, as they transition to kind of this new economy, you're pulling this country out of the Stone Age, and they're kind of trying to learn how to navigate the new world. They really struggle with finding jobs because they don't have any training. They don't have any marketable skills. So there's a lot of crime from young men who are trying to make money or just bored, and they're just causing problems. And since I had this guy, they're so, in many ways, I don't want to make fun of them, but in many ways they're kind of like kids. They're very ignorant of the world. And I had one guy come up, we were talking to him, and he asked me if Spider-Man was real. And I asked him several times to repeat himself because I was like, no, of course he's not real. And he's like, well, but they see videos of him like flying through New York City, and I'm like, I had to explain to him, no, Spider-Man is not real. It's just a movie they made up. It's a story. It doesn't happen. It's like, don't believe anything you see on YouTube. So it's just one example of how sometimes they're easy to manipulate, and so other countries will come in, like China especially, will come in and take natural resources, a lot of minerals. PNG has a ton of minerals, a ton of gold, a ton of rare earth minerals, and so they're sitting on a very prosperous location, but the logistics and the management skills and stuff are such that they just get taken advantage of quite often. And I had this time when I stayed in this fancy hotel in Port Moresby, which is the capital. I mean, it was the fanciest hotel I've ever seen, and definitely the fanciest one I ever stayed in. And you have the Australian ambassador there on one hand. On the other hand, I came down and I met this group of men who are standing in front of the elevator, and they've never seen an elevator before. They didn't know how to use it. And so you have this like disparity between, you know, the rich. There's some people there who are very wealthy. I mean, corruption's a real thing in the government, and so you have some people there who are very wealthy, and you have some people who, you know, have never seen cars before or electricity, or I mean, they might have seen a solar panel, but they've never seen, you know, where you flick a light switch on and the lights come on. That just blows their mind. Or like one time I needed a new faucet. I went to the hardware store and I was looking for a faucet, and I could only find faucets with one temperature. It was just cold. And I was like, don't you people have hot and cold? I don't want just, and I was getting kind of frustrated and upset, and then it finally dawned on me like, oh, no one here has running hot water. Why would they sell taps with 2 settings? That doesn't make sense. No one buys it. So it's just that stuff you run into where you have these assumptions, and you go to the store and you're like, oh yeah, what am I doing? I'm not in America. This is different. Healthcare. So there are numerous healthcare challenges in PNG. Malaria is very common, especially where we are. It's a lot of swamps, a lot of mosquitoes, and malaria can get pretty deadly pretty fast. We've seen a lot of children come in who, if you have it for several weeks, it's a bloodborne pathogen, and they'll get really high fevers, they'll go unconscious, and usually the villagers will wait. They'll try. It's kind of like what we do in our way. You try other things before you go to the hospital, right? You don't just go straight to the hospital as soon as you're sick. But their problem is they wait, and they try. They have a lot of traditional, like witchcraft things they try. They have healing stones they try to put on them, and they try all this other stuff. And when it's like down to the wire, the kid's unconscious, they call us, and we haul them in. And we've seen it so often. But malaria is really a big problem. There is medication for it. It is treatable, but they don't have it out in the villages. There's no supply chain. There's no medicine. They have to come in and get it. Tuberculosis is common, and they have what they call multiple drug-resistant tuberculosis, which is becoming more widespread. It's where, because traditionally the hospital will give them TB medicine, and say, take this for 6 months. The people leave, they take it for 2 weeks, they feel better, and they're like, well, I'm gonna save this for later, or I'm gonna sell this to my friend because he's sick and he can take it. And I mean, I guess that makes logical sense, but the problem is the TB comes back and now it's resistant to the drugs that they had. And so there's a lot of, we call it MDR TB, multiple drug resistant TB. And this kind of results, again, from a lack of education. The child mortality rate in the remote villages is about 40%, so 4 out of 10 children die before the age of 5. Every mother lost a child. If you talk to a mother, it's not uncommon at all for them to say, I have 7 children, I have 5 living, or I have 6 kids, 3 living, or whatever. They'll kind of give you the counts of both. Infections, especially in this area, it's hot, humid, infections will set in quickly. They have no way to, even if they have antibiotics out there, there's no one who can prescribe them. There's no doctors around. There's a few aid posts that are set up by missions, but it's basically a glorified, well, I would say they're not even on an EMT level status. You know, it's basically a first aid station with some bandages and Tylenol. You know, that's what they have. AIDS is a really large problem there. That's still growing. Domestic abuse is widespread. Historically it's susceptible to beat your wife or to have several wives. It's still like fairly common and not looked down upon too much. I mean, that's changing. Again, all this is changing, but but that's historically kind of what you're coming from. And because of the poor electrical supply and just superstitions, they don't really have a blood bank. They do, but it's normally empty. So if we have someone who needs a surgery, they'll call all their relatives to come into town and donate blood, and then they'll use their relatives' blood because they don't want to use other people's blood. And there's just a lot of issues, issues that come in front of like surgery. So if they'll need surgery, again, they'll wait for the relatives to come in and give blood. But again, you saw the roads are bad. There's a fuel shortage. The canoes aren't running on the river. Whatever. I mean, so the relatives have a hard time coming in, or they don't come in at all. And so often people from our organization will go and give blood just to help people get surgery. And this is one time, so we have, in our hospital in our town, we had a bush villager come in, and he took a bath in the water tank for the water supply for the whole hospital. So they had to drain the entire water supply and they postponed several weeks of surgeries because they drained the water supply. Town water wasn't on, it wasn't running, so they had to wait for rain because they collect all the rain from the gutters. And so it's just like things you never even think of here as problems frequently come up there. And another problem is, money. They subsistence farmers. They don't have jobs. They don't really make a lot of money. There's still money in the villages, and they'll commonly pool the money together. So if someone needs an operation or something, they can kind of gather all the money together and go help that person have that operation. But the problem is if you're in a lower social caste, or if you're a girl in a poor family in a remote village no one cares about, chances of people giving you money to go get access or to get a surgery or whatever are pretty low. It's just part of the culture. There are lots of preventable diseases and death, things that are routine here. If you're out in the middle of nowhere, can mean death. There are, like I said, there's a lot of aid posts throughout the CPIC region where we are. Many of them are run by missionaries or the government, but they're helpful. They kind of help us a lot, but they're still not a very high level quality of care. All right. So that's kind of where our ministry, that's kind of the country that we got plopped into. And these are the situations that we find around us. And then, so I kind of want to take you through kind of what our ministry does and how we help address some of these challenges. All right, so I heard this story once, and you probably heard it before, but I kind of liked it. I'm just going to read it. Kind of gives an idea. It's you get plopped into that country, and you have, like we've been loading. I've been helping to unload pregnant women or women with a new baby. And they'll look at me and say, "Do you want my baby? Like I can't have it. Like I don't have any money. I don't have any. Like it was born out of wedlock. No one wants me back in the village. Whatever the situation is, they can't take care of it." And it's like I can't adopt every baby that comes out of the airplane, and it just gets so discouraging sometimes because you're like, how can I can't solve any of these issues. There's so many issues, like where do you even start? And so I like this story because it kind of gives this perspective. So one day, a man was walking along the beach when he noticed a boy picking something up and gently throwing it into the ocean. Approaching the boy, he asked, "What are you doing?" The boy replied, "Throwing starfish back into the ocean. Their surf is up and the tide is going out. If I don't throw them back, they'll die." "Son," the man said, "don't you realize there are miles and miles of beach and hundreds of starfish? You can't make a difference." After listening politely, the boy bent down, picked up another starfish, and threw it back into the surf. Then, smiling at the man, he said, "I made a difference for that one." And that's kind of how I feel. We can't possibly help everyone in Papua New Guinea, but we sure can make a huge difference in some individuals' lives. And so here's how, kind of with God's help and a lot of people helping us, we try to meet these challenges. So where do you start? Well, Samaritan Aviation, the organization we're with, was started when our CEO, his name is Mark Palm, traveled to the Sepik River on a missions trip and saw the need. He was a pilot, He was at that time he was just a casual pilot, but he recognized that a lot of these access problems could be solved with an airplane. But the problem is a regular airplane, with wheels, there's no runways in the area. There's no place to build runways. It's swampy, wet. But he was like, what if you had a float plane? And turns out that was a good idea because the Sepik River Basin is huge. It's the Sepik River. You can see Wewak kind of right above, kind of midway there. Wewak's on the top there. That's where we live. The Sepik River runs right beneath us. It's about 700 miles long, and it has a watershed area of 31,000 square miles. That is about the area of South Carolina. And in that region, there's only one hospital, and that's in our town of Wewak, where we bring the patients. So if you had a float plane, suddenly you could turn this isolated area, this area that is really hard to get into, suddenly you would have all kinds of access points throughout the area because you have tons of water, you have tons of rivers, you have tons of lakes. A 700-mile obstacle would suddenly turn into a 700-mile runway, right? So it made sense, and not only that, but a float plane. So if you go up to the mouth of the Sepik, way up northwest there, and you take a canoe or you try to get to Wewak, it'll take you about 3 days if everything goes right. So you can imagine if you have an emergency situation, no one's going to make it. Like there's a lot of preventable death that happens just because of that logistical challenge. But we can do that flight in about an hour and a half, or if you're closer, it might take a day and a half to get to Wewak. We can do it in about 30 minutes, 20 minutes sometimes. It cuts the trip down to nothing because we just fly over all the obstacles. So Mark saw this. Mark saw the opportunity. He started fundraising. Well, he started Samaritan Aviation in 2000, and it took him about 10 years of fundraising to get the first airplane and to get it over there and to get started. So he started flying in about 2010. This is kind of our process, what we do, how we find people, how we pick up people. So the first step to helping people in an emergency is to know that there's an emergency, right? So if you don't know someone needs help, you can't go help them. So the first step is that we need to know there's an emergency. This sounds easier than it is. People, again, there's poor cell phone reception. So people will climb mountains. People will get in a canoe and go to neighboring villages. They'll go wherever they have to get cell phone coverage, and they'll call us. And they'll call us with their problem. Well, the second step is determining if it actually is an emergency, because sometimes it's not an emergency. As you can imagine, you just have villagers calling us. So that's why we have a medical director who takes the calls and he triages the patients, make sure it is an emergency, and then he tells the pilot on call about the flight. And then the third step is the pilot gets a nurse from the local hospital and meds if he has to, and then they drive to the airport. This sounds a lot easier than it is as well, because nurses show up late because of tribal flights. Like I say, logistics is a big problem. Sometimes the nurses won't show up. So is the nurse even there? We don't know. The hospital is sprawling. It has a lot of different wards and a lot of different pathways. And sometimes the nurse isn't where they said they would be. They're like, hey, meet us here. You go there. They're not there. Of course, there's these language barriers in the way. So you run through the hospital. You try to figure out where they are. You call people. They call you. You call this person. You find your nurse. You go to the airport. The fourth step is the pilot goes and picks up the patient. And this sounds easier than it is as well, because weather in PNG can be very localized, and so they don't always know what they're flying into. They don't know what the weather's like at the village they're going to. Rivers rise and fall. Sometimes rivers can rise and fall about 20 feet in the Sepik region. So sandbars will move. What worked last time doesn't necessarily work this time. And also a problem is, they run into this a lot, where finding a specific canoe is very challenging. When you're flying into this lake full of canoes, and they're all excited to see an airplane, and they're all waving at you, and you're like, okay, where's this guy? You know, he said he was going to have a red umbrella or whatever. It can be pretty challenging. The fifth step is the pilot picks up the patient, flies back to Wewak, and we take the patient to the hospital. And this is pretty straightforward. We give them, every time we bring them into the hospital, we give them a care package. The hospital does not take care of the patients like, they expect the family members to come take care of the patients. So the nurses, they give them 2 meals a day of rice, that's about it. And the villagers never eat rice. They don't eat rice much, and so it never agrees with them. They always have digestive issues. So we give them a care package of soap, basic necessities, a washcloth, bottled water, plastic bowl, but probably the most important thing that we give them, the most impactful thing, is a solar audio Bible. Remember, most of them can't read, and so you can't give them a Bible because they can't read it. And their reading comprehension is not very good either, because that's not what they typically, how they get information. So they're used to stories being passed down orally, and this audio Bible works great for that because it's the same format that they're used to hearing this. And another cool thing about it is it has a speaker on it, so we'll go into the hospital and we'll find several people, other patients gathered around listening to the Bible. So it draws in more than just one person, and then they even take it back to their village, and they can listen to it there. These audio Bibles are definitely the most expensive part of the care package that we give them, but we think it's really important to do. It's a great ministry. I do have a link back at the table if you feel led to help buy some more so we can give them to patients. We have a link back at the table that you can do that. So after the patient is admitted, we take turns visiting the patient, making sure they have enough food, they're getting the care they need. Sometimes the care they get in the hospital is not very good, so sometimes we'll step in and actually try to gently redirect care. So we'll do counseling with them. A lot of times there's a lot of emotional trauma as well, tribal fighting, that sort of thing, family feuds, abuse, a lot of domestic abuse again. So we also have a 15-part video series using their local language. We take on iPads and we walk them through creation, through Revelation, kind of in a short, like a Jesus-centered story of the Bible, take them through the Bible. And we continue this visitation every day. We all take turns visiting the patient. So the patient gets visited every day, and we continue the visitations till they leave. Sometimes we'll be with patients for months, and sometimes it'll just be a day or two. But the cool thing about this process, and another cool thing is we never charge them for the flights. So the flights, the airplane ride, everything is completely free. We never charge them for it, again, because if we did, we would be cutting off access to probably the people who need it the most, the poorest girl in the most forgotten village. But since we do it for free, we can reach those people who really need it. And we kind of modeled, why we're called Samaritan Aviation, we kind of modeled this all after the parable in the Bible of the Good Samaritan. I'm just going to read that real quick. Well, actually, I'm running out of time. I think we all know the parable of the Good Samaritan, so I'm just going to kind of go through it here. So the Good Samaritan, he saw the guy that got robbed by the bandits, and he went to him, he approached him, he bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. So the first step to being a Good Samaritan is being aware of the need and then choosing to respond, right? So he went to him. That's an important part of the story. And instead of oil and wine, obviously we're using modern medicine to treat them. And then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. So instead of a donkey, we're using a float plane. Instead of an inn, we're using a hospital. But it's still very much the same kind of pattern. The next day, he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said. So we do the same thing. We bring them in, and once they're there, we go and look after them. We bring them food. We go through the Bible with them. We try to counsel them and comfort them any way we can. So that's why we call ourselves Samaritan Aviation, because it kind of models after that parable. Now we can talk about the airplanes a little bit. This is kind of where I come in a little bit. We started with 1 airplane, obviously. Start with 1. Now we have 3. We have them all lined up here on the beach. We have 3 in the country and 1 in the States that will eventually come over. They are amphibious Cessna 206s. So that means, amphibious simply means they can land on water and runways, which works really well for us. We take off at the main airport, which is a paved runway, and we take off, put the wheels up, land on the river, pick up the patient, come back, put the wheels down, and drop them off at the airport. It's a pretty good system. Our planes are built from about 1974 to 1984, so they're actually fairly old, but we refurbish them. We add about 18 major modifications to the airplane. We install floats, obviously, so we can land on the water. Floats are heavy, not very aerodynamic, so we put bigger engines in the airplane as well. We put a bigger propeller in. It has about a 550 cubic inch engine in it, a 6-cylinder. It's kind of strange. We put on bigger wingtips so we can carry more weight. We have more wing area. We even cut an extra door into the one side of the airplane so we have more access. And it makes it more useful, but it also makes maintenance more complicated because there's a lot of extra things you got to take care of. The airplanes require routine inspections. The floats get pretty banged up from canoes and stuff. There I'm patching one. They're made out of fiberglass, so they are repairable. The airplanes get a lot of corrosion. Everything rusts really fast. It's hot, humid, and we need more mechanics. So I don't know if there's any airplane mechanics here or not, or people who want to be airplane mechanics, but we need more mechanics. I'm especially aware of that because I'm the only mechanic over there. Well, only full-time mechanic. So let's talk about the team a little bit. People always ask, how many people are over there? How big is the organization? We currently have 6 full-time missionary families in Papua New Guinea. Depending on who is there, who's on furlough at the moment, there's always people coming and going, so it changes a lot. But 5 of the families, us included, live on a half-acre base. We have 23 children on base on a half-acre. Most of it's houses, and so it's like as soon as you go out the front door, it's chaos. There's kids everywhere, which part of my worry about going to the mission field was that my kids would be isolated and wouldn't have any friends. And that hasn't happened. I get tired of all their friends, actually. So we have 4 pilots, and we have 1 more pilot in the pipeline. All the pilots will occasionally help with maintenance. A couple of them are really good at it, but we all wear multiple hats, whether it's maintaining the base generator, fixing cars, counting inventory, or repairing. We have an old banana boat, we call it, that we try to keep running. One of the pilots is my chief engineer. He's my boss. I'm the only full-time mechanic. All right, so we also employ 2 national apprentices, Xavier and Karu. I can never say his name right. But there I'm trying to teach them how a constant speed propeller works. And I had to check myself a couple times. But they are 2 great guys. It's very encouraging to work with them because they really want to get somewhere in life. They really want to learn. And they have a good aptitude. They're very skilled with their hands, and I think they'll do a good job. But it does take a big time investment to try to get them certificated in their country. We also have several national Christians who help in our hospital visitation ministry, and they do very well. They communicate a lot better than we do. They're much better at the culture. They understand how to present the gospel better. So they're a great asset to the organization. It's easy to get pretty calloused towards patients sometimes because you see a lot of trauma. You see a lot of people come and go, and you just it's hard to have fresh sympathy for everybody. But there's definitely some patients that leave more of a mark on you than others, and this is one of them. His name is Abis. I can never say it right. Abis. Yeah, that sounds right. He's about 3 years old. He came in with eye cancer. I didn't want to make everyone squeamish, so I covered up the most disturbing part of his tumor, but he has a tumor coming out of his eye socket. He came with his parents from May River. May River is way up. It's like an hour-and-a-half flight. It's like 3-4 days up the river. So it's in the bush really well. And they came in. May River, you have to know May River. May River is like like a witchcraft central. Like that's where a lot of the medicine men go to get their training. And so you could say it's like the heart of enemy territory. And when they come in, there's a kind of a bias in town against the bush villagers sometimes. So they don't always get the best treatment because people are like, it doesn't matter. Their relatives aren't here to get angry at us if they die. There's all that going on. But he came in and WEWAC, the hospital at WEWAC there, quickly realized they're not going to be able to help him as much as they can. So they recommended he go to Port Moresby, which is the capital. So by the time they got to Port Moresby, he had about a 5-inch tumor sticking out of his eye. And it was painful. I mean, it ripped our hearts out every time we saw him because we couldn't do anything about it. But it was so painful. And he would cry a lot because there was a lot of pressure in there. And so we were thankful that he got to go to Port Moresby for chemo and some more treatment. But his parents were very resistant to the gospel. They had stone-faced. I mean, they didn't let anyone pray for them except Samaritan staff because we flew them in. So it kind of opened a door there. But they were very resistant to the gospel. They didn't want to hear anything about it. But they went to Port Moresby, and Port Moresby is even more. It's a big city. There's a lot of noise, a lot of crime, a lot of buses. I mean, these people they never saw a bus or a house, a skyscraper or anything before in their lives. So they were very out of their element and kind of vulnerable to being ripped off or being stolen or robbed. So we couldn't be in Port Moresby, but we knew it's kind of a God thing where we're like, oh, we know this missionary couple who's transitioning from PNG to Thailand, but during this time of a couple months, they're in Port Moresby. So we called them up and we asked, hey, can you go check on this family? Because we can't be there and we don't know what's going on. We can't really make sure they're getting care. So can you check on them, bring them food, and make sure they kind of know their way around the city and kind of watch after them? And they said, sure, we'd love to do that. So they kind of took them under their wing, and they involved the local PNG church they were going to. So they brought the pastor, and they were visiting them for several months. And during this time, we left PNG to come home on furlough. So we flew through the capital, we stopped, we went and visited them, and they were super happy to see us. They were happy to see familiar faces, which I guess, if you're in a town full of strangers, it's nice to see someone you know. And so we visited with them for a while. It was really cool, very encouraging. Also, I mean, every time you visited him, it was also really heart-wrenching, but they were getting care, and that was great. So we only had a couple hours. We left, flew home to America, and during this time, they were witnessing to them. And there was another God thing that happened. Try not to mess up the story, but there was another God thing that happened where in the same hospital in Port Moresby, there happened to be another 4-year-old boy who had eye cancer. His parents were from the CPIC, so they had come from the same area, and they were Christians. And so him and the father of Abis started hanging out a lot because they were one kind. They were the same culture, and so this guy was getting witnessed to on several different fronts. And then when we got home, we got this photo, we got a message. It said, hey, you got to welcome these people to the Christian family because they accepted Christ, both parents. And that was awesome. We were so excited about that because we saw the whole progression from stone-faced, like witchcraft, to accepting Jesus as their Savior. And so we were super excited about that, and we were just so amazed to see how God moved everything. And he took these people out of their comfort zone, made them dependent on these people who loved them and took care of them and brought them to Jesus. Unfortunately, several months after that happened, Abis passed away, and so they had to go back to their village in May River. And so if you think about it, just continue to pray for them. They're very young believers, and they're going back to a very dark place. And you just never know what's going to happen with that story, how it's going to end. This is another story about Osman. Again. As a mechanic, I don't get to fly out to the bush very often. But one of the times that our family got to fly out to the bush was during our bush orientation. And just as we loaded the planes to fly out, we got this call, hey, they've got this child who's bitten by a snake, a death adder, like I had talked about. And so that's obviously a time-sensitive emergency, so we quickly unloaded one plane, we sent the plane out, and here the plane was going to the exact same village that we were planning on going to Samban. And of course that made us a little worried about snakes, like, oh, we're going to this village where this kid just got bit by a snake. So they brought him back and took him to the hospital. We hopped back in the planes, flew out to the village, and a couple days after we're in the village, we heard that Osman had come back, and he was alive and well. He was doing great. So we thought this was fantastic. Let's go over and visit him. We were neighbors with his. We were his neighbors there, staying with the missionaries there in the village. So we went over and visited him, and we found his cousin there with Osman's audio Bible up in the house listening to the Bible. So it was really cool to see that firsthand, that effect in the village. And so we went over to the house and we said hi, and his mom came out and gave us some produce. She was very thankful for what we did and how we helped with that. So there she is giving us some produce, some corn. Is that corn? Yeah, corn. And she explained that she had an older son named Osman, the same name, right? An older son. He got bit by a death adder and died. And then she had another son. She named him Osman in honor of her earlier son. And now this son was bitten by a death adder as well. And she was very worried there was a family curse or there was something going on, some witchcraft. And so when he came back alive and well, she was overjoyed, as anyone would be. But I just thought it was kind of a cool element to the story. And here he is with his dad and his cousins. And it was really cool being in that village and seeing him in his house and thinking, if the float plane wasn't flying that day, they would be having what they call a house cry or a funeral right now. There would be relatives from all over the place, and they would be burying this, I think, 7-year-old kid. But because, it's just that moment of gratification, like, wow, he literally almost came back from the dead, He shouldn't have survived that. All right. So I just want to wrap up with some things we've learned over the last 2 years. I think they were the hardest 2 years of my life. And I don't say this to brag, obviously, definitely grumbled a lot. I didn't do very well in handling my trials gracefully. Sometimes it's good to come back on furlough and have some time to think about what happened, to pray about it, and kind of let the dust settle and think about what you did wrong, what you did right, how you could do better. But what I've been learning is that good seas don't make good sailors. Good seas don't make good sailors. You need a rough ocean to have a sailor improve his skills. So God said, go ye into all the world, and we went, kind of expecting God to help us, right? That's a good expectation. God said he'll be with us. And so we were ambitious, we were full of work ethic, which are all good things. It's not wrong to be full of work ethic. But we ran into the world trying to accomplish as much as possible, as fast as possible. But what we found is that God's timeline, frequently doesn't match our own. God is never in a hurry, and we always are. And so we kind of ran ahead of God, I think. I started trying to do things on my own power. You get too busy to have your devotions. You get too busy to spend time with God. You're too busy working with God to spend time with him, There's all this need out there. And then we get grumpy, we get bitter, we get worn out, we get overwhelmed, which was very much how I felt most of the time I was there. And we're so busy, we have no time for interruptions. You get so mad when people interrupt your work because you're like, I need to get this done. But I found that interruptions are typically how God speaks to us. That's how he works. He interrupts us. Think about Moses or Gideon or Mary and Joseph. God interrupted their lives, and that's how God worked in their lives. And so being able to respond appropriately to interruptions, I think, is really important, because someone comes to the front gate and they want help, and you're like, I don't have time for this. But you know what? That might be your biggest opening into ministry, is that person at the front gate, even though the generator needs to be fixed, even though you have all these other things. And so God has God has patience. I never have patience. God does. And he just kind of lets me exhaust myself until I'm lying on the floor. I'm defeated. I have no more strength to go on. And I think part of that is removing your pride. Sometimes we think we can do this. And I think God sometimes has to just let us try until we realize we can't. And then we come back to him and we're like, I have this bunch of failures. You're really hard on yourself. But as humans, I find if we just put a little effort into something, such like evangelism or something like that, and it works well, we immediately start thinking, oh, like we were part of that success. We're pretty good at this. Or like I'm a pretty good person. Or like, somehow we kind of puffs us up. And so I think God uses trials, interruptions, anything at all to kind of roadblock my accomplishments. Because we're concerned about accomplishing things. God is concerned about a character. And sometimes to change our character, he can't let us accomplish things. And so that seems counterintuitive, but I've been looking back at the last 2 years, and I've been realizing that, we grew a lot, and we helped a lot of people. And so I think it was successful. Again, like I said, if nothing else, it teaches you humility. And I think that's the most important thing we can take away from that, is that God would rather work on our character than have us accomplish things. And once he has worked on our character, ironically, he'll help us accomplish things. I think he changes us first, helps us change the world second. And so often we switch that around. So I'll just leave this verse with you guys. Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, and let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. All right. I'd just like to pray quick and then turn it back over to Tony, I guess. All right, Father, thank you so much that I got to come here and share about what we did in PNG and kind of our failures, our successes, and just what a crazy, wonderful country that is and all the need there. And I pray that, I just pray that you take the words that I said and that you would do something useful with them. I pray that you bless us tonight as we leave, give us safety in our travels home. I just ask that this would all be for your honor and your glory, and that you would get praise out of it. In Jesus' name, amen.